Our next speaker is Maria Sauer. Maria is a sophomore majoring in sociology with a concentration in human services. She's also a member of the Michels Hall Service Program, and one of the items on her bucket list is to go skydiving. She's braver than me. The title of Maria's talk is Connected Through Presence.
So each week through Michels Hall Service Program, my suite, we go to Freedom House Ministries where we provide childcare. Not only do we provide childcare, but we also take part in their mission to provide short-term needs that will empower the homeless families and to break their cycle of homelessness. And as I think of the connections we've made with the families over the course of the year that we have been there, there's one day that sticks out to me in particular. And it's a day that has remained with me to both challenge and to motivate me. So one evening, we're driving away from campus and heading towards Freedom House. And like usual, we are talking and thoughts are filling our minds of what children will be there that night, if any families have moved out and found a home, and if there would be any new families coming. And so we pull up to Freedom House, we park the car, we walk into the doors, and there's an immediate embrace by the children. We hear their voices, some familiar ones that we've grown to know, but we also hear some unfamiliar ones of children we'll soon meet. As we head down to the child care room, we're consumed by this excitement as we plan the activities for that evening, and not too long after, we hear the youthful echoes of the children as they hurry down the stairs, round the corner, and come racing into the child care room. There's one boy that sticks out to me in particular, partly because he's racing into the room and the other children are getting frustrated with him because he's tearing through them, but also because he has been at Freedom House for about 3 weeks now. And in that time, he has gotten into numerous fights with the other kids, and he has had a hard time connecting with the other children. And as the other children raise their voices to bring attention to his misbehavior, I walk over to where he is, and he immediately embraces me. I reach out my hand, and I feel his small hand fill my palm. I begin walking with him, and he tells me about school, he tells me about gym class, and he tells me about his friends. As he proudly talks about his day, there's a sudden change of expression as he talks about his friend Stephen, who also is at Freedom House. And Stephen is a few years older than he is, but they've grown to like one another. And as he talks about Stephen, there's a sudden change of expression because he utters the words that Stephen, who's only known for a short while, is the only one that understands him. As he says these words, his face turns red, as if he said something no one was meant to hear. He looks down and he runs off. He goes off across the room and he plays basketball with some of the other kids. And I go into the childcare with 2 of the other girls, until again I hear those familiar sounds. That Charlie's hitting Thomas, that Charlie's knocking down all the toys, that Charlie's taking the basketball away from them. And so as I hear these familiar sounds, unfortunately, they aren't unfamiliar, and they aren't unfamiliar behaviors of Charlie. So as I walk towards where they're playing basketball, I'm stopped midway by Charlie, who comes up to me, he grabs my hand and he begins walking with me. And as I hold his hand this time, it feels a little smaller and it feels a bit more innocent. And I feel that if I let go of his hand, there will be an innocent presence that just falls and it shatters to the ground. And I hold his hand and I feel that this sense of comfort isn't something he experiences much. And so as I hold his hand and I walk with him, he stops, he looks up at me and he thanks me for being his friend. What takes me back isn't that he's thanking me, but it's the way that he says these words, as if the expectation were for me to not be his friend, as if the expectation were for me to come into his life for once a week and to not build any connection. And as he says these words, I think of just a few minutes before when he said how Stephen was his best friend and that he was the only one that understood him. And so as I look at Charlie and I'm walking with him, I looked at the stairs that he had just come running down, full of energy, excited for childcare. And I look across the stairs, and there's a cross. And across the cross are the words written, "Lay your needs upon the cross." And each time I come to service and I look at the cross, I wonder what these words mean to the different people that walk past them. And so as I'm walking with Charlie, we're walking towards where the stairs are, I look at him, I look at the cross that has words of refuge draped across it, and I tell him that this is what connects us. And he's confused by the idea of being connected because it probably doesn't listen or hear it very often, but it's the idea of being connected for him isn't something that he's been able to experience from being in a different location for different short periods of time. And it's an idea that he hasn't felt very often. And so as I look at him and I tell him that this is what connects us, his face isn't red and shameful, and his face isn't low as if he said something wrong. But he looks down, and as I'm holding his hand and he grips it tighter, tears fall from his eyes. And in that moment, there wasn't anything that separated us or anything that distinguished us one from the other. But in that moment, we were on the same level, experienced the same presence that filled the room.